Hello everyone, I welcome you all. Here Literary Paradise brings to you another lecture dedicated to Ode to a Nightingale, a beautifully composed poem by John Keats. So friends, I have already explained to you the first half of this poem in my previous lecture. You can find the link of my previous lecture up on your screen right now, and I have also mentioned it in the description given below. So, friends, in the first half of this poem, we have seen how the imagination of our poet reacts to the melodious song of the nightingale. The song of this beautiful bird pours down a strange melancholy and a desire to escape the world. The poet begins by expressing a hallucinating effect of the bird's song and compares this effect to the effect of some intoxicating drugs and Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Thereafter, he enlists a number of terrifying pictures of the human world that are responsible to induce him a desire to leave this world behind and join the mirthful company of the nightingale. So I'm ready to start with the fourth stanza today. Look at the stanza now. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his parts, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee, tender is the night, and haply the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry face. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through wondrous glooms and winding mossy ways. See, in the previous stanzas, we saw that poet had been enlisting many intoxicating things, like he talked about hemlock, he talked about opium, he talked about lethe, and also about the deep dwelled vintage. Remember, he expressed his keen desire to taste a country wine, but in this stanza, we will see that our poet is shifting his attention from senses to reason. Bacchus is a Roman name for Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, and parts refer to the attendants of Bacchus. Simply, our poet says that he wants to be lost into the fanciful world of the nightingale, but for this he won't rely on wine or other intoxicating things. He would rather choose his spontaneous poetic imagination for this purpose. Thus, our poet wants to escape this troublesome and scary world of us with the help of his invisible poetic wings. Now, see, poet is gradually becoming conscious of his surroundings. He feels his brain has been tired with so many thoughts, but he can also feel the delicacy and tranquility of the night time. He again alludes to mythologies, and this time he alludes to Selene, the goddess of moon in the Greek mythology. Now, poet says that the goddess has sat upon her throne, and her face means her attendants are clustered around her throne. He further says that despite the starry night with the beautiful moon, there is no light around. Why? Because our poet is sitting in a garden and the dense tree leaves are blocking the moonlight. Okay? And poet says that because of this densely overgrown garden, the scattered light is reaching on earth. Quadrus screen refers to the tree leaves. I'm moving on to the next stanza. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs, but in embalmed darkness guess each sweet, wherewith the seasonable month endows, the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild, white hawthorn, and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violet, covered up in leaves, and mid May's eldest child, the coming musk rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. The entire stanza can be seen as a commentary by our poet using his sense experience only. as nothing is visible to him, so he is making a lot of guess about his surroundings. He can feel his feet touching grass, bushes, or flowers on the ground, and he can smell the sweet aroma of seasonal flowers like hawthorn, eglantine, violet, and musk rose, which is described as May's eldest child. Because this flower, musk rose, blooms in the beginning of the May, it means it blooms earlier, so it is elder to the other flowers. See, the beauty of this flower is being enhanced by the dew drops on its petals. Dewy wine denotes dewdrops, okay? Meanwhile, the poet hears a sharp and somber humming of flies and beetles nearby. You can see that the atmosphere of this poem is getting serious now. Next stanza. Darkling I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now more than ever seems it rich to die, to seize upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sort. Here poet says that his mood is getting darkened by the pensive and heart-melting song of this bard. He confesses another secret of his life, that he has been obsessed with the idea of death, and many times in his mused rhymes, means in his poems, he has addressed death with some sweet names and pleaded him to take out his breath. It means to get rid of the sufferings of his life. Poet has pleaded death to approach him. But poet finds this moment appropriate to die. Of course, because everyone expects his final hour to be painless and peaceful. This is why the poet aspires to die at this pleasant hour, brightened by the moon and the stars above, and filled with some enchanting fragrances of the spring flowers, and most importantly, the nightingale is pouring down her melodious song right now. So, all these elements are enhancing the beauty of this moment, and for this reason, Keats feels it's rich to die in such a happy and serene ambience. Look at the final lines of this stanza. Here, poet envisions the scene after his death. He imagines that this bird would continue to sing her tuneful song even after the poet dies. But the dead poet won't be able to enjoy it, because the lifeless ears of our poet won't supply him the bliss of the bird song. Requiem is a musical composition that is sung in a church to honor a dead person. But because poet seems to dislike the human world, so he wants Nightingale to perform this ceremony for him. So the same song of this bird would become a mourning song on poet's death. Sod refers to a heap of grass, so it means that the lifeless body of Keats would like nothing more than a heap of soil. Next stanza. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bard, no hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown, perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn, the same that oft times hath charmed the magic casements opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Now, see, poet is addressing Nightingale as an immortal bard. It can have two connotations here. Look, immortal can be a reference to the immortal song of this bird. Though one day the bird will die, but her song would be continued by another bird of her family. In this way, the song is immortal, okay? It can also refer to Phoenix, a mythical bard in the Greek mythology, which regenerates itself out of its own ashes. So, phoenix symbolizes renewal and regeneration. Hungry generation indicates towards the greedy and self centered humans who are so hungry that they can consume the peace and happiness of their fellow human beings. So, here, poet says that this hungry generation cannot affect the happy world of Nightingale, like it cannot bow down her undefiled value. Now, poet explains as how this song of the Nightingale is immortal. He says that the song that he is hearing this night had been heard by kings and clones in the ancient times. This is the same song that was heard by Ruth while she was working on her farms and feeling homesickness. Friends, the context of Ruth has been derived from the Old Testament of Bible. So it presents Ruth as a sweet and dedicated widow in the ancient Rome who was suggested for a second marriage by her mother-in-law, but she was so kind and so dedicated to her mother-in-law that she rejected this offer and chose to help her by working in her corn farms. Here, poet associates the tragedy of Ruth with the nightingale by saying that Ruth might have heard this song, and the pensive harmony of this song might have made her homesick. Keats imagines that the song might have been fascinating to the sailors inside a ship. The perpetual melody of this song might have heard by these people by opening the casements, means the windows of their ship. See, our poet's imagination is wandering in some forlorn fairylands. He imagines this ship floating across this forlorn place, means deserted or lonely place. So, this is how Keats has presented the Nightingale song as a perpetual melody appealing to people from different times and different places. I'm reading the final stanza now. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my sole self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades. Past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it's buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music, do I wake or sleep? Now, a strange thing happens to our poet with the utterance of the word forlorn. It rings a bell to our poet that he has been traveling around a visionary word. So, this word forlorn brings our poet to the actual word, and now poet wants to get rid of his imaginary word, stimulated by the Nightingale song. Adieu is a French word to say goodbye. So poet says goodbye to his imagination and declares that fancy cannot cheat him anymore. Here he addresses his imagination as an elf. See, elves are beautiful fairies who are known to mislead people by creating illusion to their vision. And now we can see that the bird has flown away without ceasing her song. As poet can hear the song near the meadows first. Meadows are the fields cultivated with the grass, okay? Thereafter, Keats can hear the bird passing through a serene water stream, and then her voice echoes in the hills. And finally, it gets vanished in some distant valley. Now, poet is becoming conscious of himself and trying to get rid of his fancy. So Keats is stuck between his dreams and reality. The last two lines of this poem express this confusion of Keats. So friends, we have seen how abruptly Keats ends this poem with a note that imaginary pleasure cannot last for long, and sufferings and deaths are inevitable parts of human life. So thank you everyone. If you find this lecture helpful, hit the like button below and do subscribe to our channel.